welcome to another episode of Real Food and Gum Flaps. We are here today with my little helper. Say hello. We are making sweet and sour pork, and because we love this dish, that's why I'm making it. The whole family love it, am I right? And it's a really easy dish to make at home. There's absolutely no reason why you need to be calling the Chinese and spending, £15 on a small dish of sweet and sour pork that is mainly just vegetables, let's face it. When it's so easy to make at home, so much better to eat at home, because I don't use any MSG, there's a lot less sugar, and you actually get like loads of meat, not just a bunch of vegetables. So the reason I'm making this dish is simply because I love Asian style food. I love the flavors. This is one of my favorite things that I used to get from a takeaway, and now I've just decided it's easier, tastier, and goes farther when you buy all the things and make it at home. So that's what you're going to be watching us doing today. Little Lise is on garlic peeling, carrots, and she's going to be using the real knife to cut our pepper.
Yeah, but it's time.
That's right. So, and I'm going to be preparing the meat, so that's what you're going to be seeing us doing today. And today I want to talk to you about when I went off to university, and the first time I actually had to cook. Because as I told you in the first episodes, I did grow up in a Jamaican family. We were always eating great food, but I never actually did any of the cooking of that food. There was some watching and a lot of eating and a lot of tasting. So I knew what my culture tasted like. I knew what great food tasted like, but I didn't necessarily know exactly how to cook it. But that didn't actually matter, because the knowledge of your heritage and the knowledge of your palate, your palate has memory, and you know what things taste like, and you have a good idea of what those things are, so you know what to put in, or at least I did. So got to uni, 4 hours away on the train, and this is when I was like, okay, now I have to feed myself. Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? I've never really been in a kitchen to actually cook food, but I turned up with my Jamaican spices, things that felt familiar to home, and I started buying things that I would see in my mum's kitchen, in my grandma's kitchen, in my granddad's kitchen, and simply just recreating dishes that I'd grown up on, that I was familiar with. And anytime I got stuck, if I was making like a particular dish, for example, oxtail or some pea soup, I would just ring my grandma or my mum and say, hey, I'm making this dish, I'm not entirely sure what to do. And they'd walk me through it on the phone. And that's pretty much how I learned to cook in real time on the phone, or just by myself, by just recreating things that I already knew. And that worked really well. And that's literally how I learned to cook. So one of the first things I made was my mum's chicken wings and her rice, simple barbecue wings, some rice and some salad, and that worked really well. Thank you, darling, that's done really, really well, that is. But I tell you what I wasn't prepared for when I got to uni was other people. I was living in student halls, and it was probably hands down one of the worst experiences of my life. I quickly realised I did not like living with other people, especially those people that I did not choose to live with. But I wasn't prepared for how ill-prepared other people's children were when it came to feeding themselves. Granted, I didn't do a lot of cooking at home, but I still had a good grasp of how to cook, having grown up on fresh meals and, great food every single day. But apparently that wasn't the case for a lot of people. So there was this one time I went into the shared kitchen and I saw my flatmate, Chris, standing in the kitchen, and he has some baked beans. Now imagine this is the baked beans, this is ghee. Imagine this is the baked beans. And he's standing there in the kitchen and he's flustered, he's looking hot, he's looking stressed out, and he's looking at this tin, and he's looking at this tin. And I was like, mate, are you all right? And he said, oh, there's no cooking instructions on this tin. He's like, I don't know what to do with it. Like, how do I cook these beans? And I just thought, rotted cup. This is bad. I mean, my guy didn't know how to heat baked beans, because, that I would like to think that most of you listening have enough wisdom to know that you don't cook baked beans, you just heat them. But you know, my guy didn't know that. So I just said to him, look, all you gotta do is put them on in that pan, put them on the fire and warm them up. I said, because you know, you could eat these cold, they're already cooked. It's just a matter of eating them warm if you want them hot. And he was like, oh, okay, but I don't know how long to put them on the fire for. And I was like, until they're hot. Like, it's not an exact science or art. You know, just put them in the pan, turn on the gas, and let them heat up. You know, stir them occasionally. That's lovely. Well done. Well done. And you know, you're gonna be all right. So he's at the pan, and it's on the fire, and he's kind of poking it like this. He's not really sure what to do with the beans. He's just nervously poking them as if the beans are gonna jump out and like attack him. So I coached him through heating the baked beans, and he was okay. You know, he heated the baked beans successfully, and it was a good day. Everyone was happy. So that was a relief. So it's quite a poignant time for me, because that's when I realized not only was I in a very good position, you know, having grown up, inheriting my culture and quietly inheriting that knowledge of food and cooking, and I was able to transfer that to the kitchen once I got into it as a young adult. But I also knew at that moment, and I promised to myself, you know, my children they weren't going to be like Chris. They were going to have the wisdom to know that you heat baked beans, you don't cook them, and they were going to be able to feed themselves, you know, proper food, and they would inherit the same culture and all of the skills to go out there and cook food. And fast forward 2 years, my first child was born, and 2 years after that, that first child was in the kitchen helping me cook, much like the youngest one who's here with me now. That eldest one is now almost 18 years old, and let me tell you, they can cook. They can cook some food, yeah? So that's what I'm talking about. They were in that kitchen at 11 years old, 10 years old, cooking four meals, 4 dinners by themselves, unsupervised, because they had the skills. They didn't need me to supervise. So that was one of the promises I made to myself. And you know, if us as millennials, you know, I'm a millennial mum. I'm sure many of you watching are. Let me know if you're a millennial mum or millennial dad, or just a millennial with no kids. And let me know in the comments. But if that's where we were as millennials when we were coming up, and we had young adults who couldn't heat baked beans and were living on Rustler's burgers and drinking jugs of Bisto gravy. Yes, the same Chris would drink jugs of Bisto gravy and call that food. It just made me think, well, it's very likely they're going to be passing on the same lack of skill to their children, you know, and then their children, who are now the Gen Zs, and the next one's coming, you know, like my eldest child, they're going to be inheriting that same skill of convenience culture, of not being able to have the basic skills to feed themselves. And then you can see how that cycle continues, and we start to lose the ability, the artistry, the basic life skill of feeding ourselves proper food made from proper ingredients from scratch. And that's quite scary. And honestly, we have lost it. It is being lost as we speak, because a lot of Gen Zs cannot cook. And it's a mix of their parents didn't know how to cook, or the parents, you know, as things have evolved in modern society, you know, we don't have stay-at-home parents so much no more. We need 2 incomes to make ends meet. So there's less time being spent in the kitchen. There's less time being spent passing on those skills, because as, you know, the world has evolved to needing both parents out. And then we've got this kind of consumer culture and this takeaway culture that's, you know, taken over. I think Uber Eats, Just Eat, Deliveroo, and all these things. You know, people don't even need to cook anymore. People outsource cooking to the takeaway app. So we've gone from being able to prepare a simple meal for yourself to I can just open an app and food just magically appears at my door. But the problem with that is we are losing that skill, and with losing that skill, we're also losing our culture. You know, we're losing something really special. We're losing the culture. We're losing that community that cooking and food and sharing a meal brings. And all of that is going down the pan. And what's being replaced, or what we're replacing it with, should I say, is convenience culture, is consumerism, is isolation, you know, essentially getting your own food, sitting down and eating it in your bedroom out of a little, you know, plastic tub or whatever. And it's just not healthy, you know. We're losing skill, we're losing culture, we're losing our health as well. Because let's face it, takeaway food is not healthy. You know, it's made to be fast, it's made to be quick, it's made to be repeatable. Thank you, darling. Yeah, you can start tearing away at these broccolis. Thank you. And making them little. And then we'll get the dipping station ready, okay?
Okay, I like dipping.
Yeah, make them into little baby trees for me.
Yeah.
It's an absolutely massive broccoli it was. Yeah, we're losing our health. You know, and that's our real wealth, is our health. Because if we're not healthy, we can't enjoy our lives, we can't enjoy our children, we can't go to work. Even if we're self-employed, it makes it difficult to turn up and do what needs to be done. So with all this convenience culture and this, oh, you don't even need to do these things because you can just order in, it's not good for us. It's not good for us on any level at all. And what happens when you can't get hold of that food no more? When it becomes too expensive. They have the illusion of being cheaper than cooking from fresh. But what I've also seen is people will open the fridge or they'll open the freezer or the cupboard and they'll look in there and see some very simple ingredients, you know, very simple. Could be a couple of onions, some vegetables, some rice, maybe a bit of, you know, leftover chicken or something from the rotisserie. And they'll shut the cupboard or the fridge or wherever it was that they was looking, and they'll say, there's nothing to eat. There's nothing that I can make a meal out of. So they then go and order in. And that then starts to feed into, you know, economic poverty, food poverty and all that, because we're throwing good food away or dismissing it as we can't do nothing with that, and then buying up some cheap rubbish to eat instead. But the cost of that cheap rubbish starts to add up, because I know takeaways are certainly not as cheap as they used to be, but also there's the health cost. You know, you might get something to eat today, but you're going to be paying for that down the line when you're, you know, sick, fat, and stuck on all of these drugs to fix the problems that come from being overweight, let's face it. So, you know, there is definitely a cost to this consumer culture and this sort of laziness around food and the lack of skill, which people will say, oh, well, I don't really need to learn to do these things because, you know, food is in abundance, I can just order it. But, you know, it goes real deep. It goes real deep. And for me on my work, I love food and cooking. Here we are preparing a meal from scratch. And I love culture. You know, I love bringing cultures together like I do with, you know, my Jamaican heritage, my British heritage, and then all the other lovely foods that I enjoy from all over the world, and taking them wherever I go to create, you know, that feeling of home, that sense of community wherever I am. And that's essentially what my diaspora kitchen is all about. You know, it's bringing all of those cultures together across borders and saying, how can we continue to enjoy and prepare these foods? My eyes are watering, that onion is strong. But how can we continue to prepare these foods even when we're in places where we may not be able to get all of the ingredients, you know, all of the things that make it authentic? But this is not about authentic cooking. You know, the diaspora kitchen is not about authenticity. It's about adaptability. You know, how are you gonna move in the kitchen, make decisions, and continue to enjoy your culture, take it with you, and make it work regardless of where you are. That's what I've been doing across countries. I've been doing it since I left the UK and went to Mexico, went to Guatemala, went to Dominican Republic, came to Colombia, and so on and so forth. So that's what I'm about, you know. This ain't the trend. This isn't fusion cooking. This is just my life. This is how I cook. And it's important to me to pass that adaptability on, you know. And I love to use the kitchen and use food as an entry point into, you know, how people think, how they relate to each other, how they adapt, how they make decisions in unfamiliar environments when there's no written rules about what to do or how to go about this. And I bring that into my work when I'm doing the experiences that I do with teams and leadership teams, employees. You know, we bring that and we use food as the entry point into how do people think, relate, adapt, and make decisions. And food is the entry point. You know, there's always some sort of cooking and excitement going on, and we're having these conversations or cooking together and working these things out as we go. And it's incredible, you know, what food opens up. You know, food brings so much more to the table than what it explains on the counter. It really does open up a whole new world into how people work, essentially. You know, how they tick, how they think, how they make those decisions, how they move when there are no written rules, no recipe book, no instruction, no policy, just how are you moving? And that's really important to my work when it comes to working with teams and working with young people as well, whether that's getting them ready to go into the workplace or helping them to get ready to go into leadership positions. And it simply helps them ready to go out into the world as well. You know, you've got all these different aspects that it covers, and it creates so much confidence in young people and in leaders, in adults as well. You know, being able to find your way around the kitchen. You know, those skills that you get and that confidence that is created is adaptable, and you can take it with you. It's transferable, and it's absolutely incredible. So that's what I wanted to chat to you guys about today. I'm now gonna get to dipping and frying and making some rice so I can finish this dish. So thank you for prepping dinner with me. It is looking delicious so far. And before I go, I'm gonna be using my brand new pan today that one of our lovely listeners sent to me. Very, very grateful. It's an absolutely gorgeous pan, and I'm very much looking forward to making this sweet and sour pork in here. So once again, big shout out to whoever sent this. We don't know who sent it. We have absolutely no idea who sent it. If you want to come forward and say, hey, that was me, please do. But if you also prefer to, you know, remain anonymous and stay in that mystery, that's fine as well. Just know that we are really, really grateful to have said goodbye to Manky Pan and got this beautiful pan in replacement. So if you guys want to be in the show and you would like me to unbox something and use something and shout you out, my Amazon wish list is in the comments, and not in the comments, in the description. So go ahead and have a look through there, see what you want to send, and I will be featuring you with a big thank you and showing it off with an unboxing video whenever that arrives. So just know that we appreciate you, and we'll see you in the next episode. Until then, keep eating great food.